Hello again from my front porch. My front porch. I say that because, and I kind of have a feeling this is going to become much more common than my traveling. As I've alluded to previously, my work-related traveling is going to be continuing to ramp up. And this month, February, uh, this this week here, this weekend, and this week going into next weekend is the only week I'm actually going to be here. Not for like entire weeks, like maybe a Monday or a Friday, but as far as an entire week goes, this week coming up is the only week in the entire month of February that I will be here, and that just blows my mind. That has not been the case for much of my traveling, but it is increasingly going to be the case. Now, will I be gone constantly like that all the time? Oh, probably not. But for various reasons, there are things going on that require me to be gone over the next several weeks here, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. So yeah, the opportunities to actually sit here on my front porch may become limited. So I want to enjoy it. I want to embrace it when I have this opportunity. And also, it means that there's a lot of stuff that needs to get done here at my house that, just the regular mundane stuff like laundry or just taking out the garbage or, just stuff like that, there's nobody else here doing that. And so when I'm home like this, I gotta take care of all of it at that time. And so, yeah, my relaxing me day here on Saturday is really more of a, okay, here's all my to-do. I have my work to-do list I'm constantly working on, and now I have my at-home to-do list that I have to try to get done now. So, woo, yeah. Anyway, I was thinking I need to do a front porch day, and honestly, I have several ideas floating around in my head, and some that were more, I'll say, more serious, more relevant to like current events going on, and there are some things that I do want to touch on, but I was like, I'm just not feeling that. I feel like I want to do something that's just a little more lighter, a little more maybe even uplifting, but it's like I don't want to just. And so then, while I was folding my laundry, actually, I had the TV on and I was watching, you're going to love this, I was watching old episodes of The Lone Ranger. And I love The Lone Ranger. I'm a big fan of The Lone Ranger. I've always been. I love the radio programs. I love the books that Fran Stryker originally wrote. I love Clayton Moore as the Lone Ranger. I have not found a lot to really love about anything since. There have been lots of other attempts to try to do some Lone Ranger things in the years since the Clayton Moore, Jay Silverheels, Lone Ranger from the 50s and 60s. I really feel like that's when we peaked as far as the presentation of him, and everything that's come since has just missed the target. Just hasn't been there. And there was an episode that was on that really resonated with me, and it kind of actually might help explain why I have this opinion that the newer stuff doesn't hit this mark, because the newer stuff doesn't capture what I'm going to describe here. But I also realized that what I noticed applies to a lot of other programming of that era of television, and it applies to the videos that I've created that we use in our training programs at work. I know it sounds like a convoluted, lots of pieces of this puzzle. Trust me, this is the way my brain works. But it all does connect, I swear. So again, I was watching several episodes, but there was one episode in particular, and I might even look it up, see if it's on YouTube, and maybe just share it to my Facebook, the whole episode, because it really was very good. It's called The Courage of Tonto. is the name of the episode. I didn't look up to see what year it was done or what season of the show or whatever, but the premise of it simply is that there is a young Indian Native American individual who has joined the U.S. Army and has now become an officer with the U.S. Army, but he's the son of a chief, of an Apache chief actually, and then, because of events that happened near the beginning of the episode, the chief gets killed and mistakenly, on his deathbed, implicates the Lone Ranger as having been responsible for his death. And there's a whole story, and I'm not going to get into all the details of the story, but the young man vows revenge against the Lone Ranger because Tonto says, I've not looked it up, I can't verify, but if Tonto said it, it has to be true. Tonto says that Apache law is that when a chief is killed, it is that the son of the chief is required to become chief and to avenge his father's death. I don't know if that was accurate or not, but it certainly helped fuel the storyline. So you have this guy who was part of the U.S. Army that now suddenly turns his back on the white man and vows revenge on the Lone Ranger. And there's this whole thing that happens with this, that the Lone Ranger knows the white man that actually did kill the chief and pledges to bring him in. But Tonto offers himself as hostage to his fellow brothers and pledges that he trusts the Lone Ranger, which the other Indians don't understand. The other Native Americans don't wrap their heads around. They don't trust any white man now. And so there's this whole thing there about distrust and racial relations. And if it's a little too low key, they just come right out. There are a couple of times where there's speeches that are made, first by the Lone Ranger, and then one by the officer in charge of the fort where the cavalry is based, where each of them have these speeches. And I'm not going to try to recite them. I didn't print them out or anything. But each of them make these speeches about how important it is for the law, for it to be very clear that the laws apply to everyone equally and that all people are treated the same. Now, you say, well, that didn't happen with Native. Well, I think it did happen. Unfortunately, not enough with Native Americans. But I want you to pause for a minute. They're depicting the Old West. But these shows were made in the late 50s, early 60s, when the civil rights movement is in its crescendo here in the United States. And viewers are turning in and they're watching a Western of the Lone Ranger and the U.S. Army dealing with a potential war with Native Americans. And in that context of this traditional Western, we get these speeches about how important it is for everyone to be treated the same. Now, do you think the point of those speeches was just to talk about white man, Native American relations? No, of course not. There was a much deeper, more significant point being made. It was a direct, in your face to a culture that was struggling with how to embrace the differences in our society, and to those who were resistant to that, to those who still wanted to treat people differently simply based on their skin pigmentation, which is, I mean, when you really think about it, that's just stupid. I mean, it's not even debate. It's just stupid. But I digress slightly. My point being, here's this episode, The Courage of Tonto, and in it, there's some really hard-hitting things there, but it is easy to dismiss them because it's trite, it's cliche, it's easy, it's simple, it's silly. The same thing can be said about Leave It to Beaver, about the Andy Griffith Show, about any of these kind of shows. Star Trek, the original Star Trek TV series, which was the wagon train in space, so it was Western yarn in space. But that show took on a whole bunch of social issues. And you talk about people complain now about shows being woke and all that kind of. I mean, the original Star Trek TV series was probably one of the most woke things on TV at the time. But we weren't talking about things on Earth. We were trying to correct how aliens on other planets were reacting, how they were treating each other, and in the process, making a point about how we should be treating each other. The reason I bring this up is because, like I said, a lot of this stuff, especially from that era, gets dismissed. Because today we want realism. We want authenticity. We need to see the angst. We need to see the turmoil. And you didn't see any of that stuff. You had people like the Lone Ranger who was literally pure as the driven. I mean, he rode a white horse. He wears a white hat. He wears that blue leotard kind of suit that is very un-cowboyish. And it never gets dirty. Because he is the pinnacle. He is the example. He is the shining light. But he's got a partner who's a Native American, who the Lone Ranger does not treat as less, does not treat as his assistant. They are equals. And there are many stories where Tonto saves the Lone Ranger. You know, it's not like Tonto's always the damsel in distress kind of thing. No, it's a partnership. And in fact, you go to the very beginning of the Lone Ranger saga, Lone Ranger wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for Tonto having saved his life at the outset. Spoiler. So anyway, I could easily keep going on about the Lone Ranger, but the point I'm trying to make, because I've got these videos at work. We created these job site scenario videos that we use in our training to facilitate discussion. Nobody likes doing role plays, but role plays are an effective way to put you in the mindset of a scenario so that you can discuss what should be done in this situation. But since nobody likes doing role plays, what I created were these videos that are all based in reality. When I was going out and talking to people on job sites and saying, hey, you know, what are the situations you've seen, what are the fires you've seen, people, what are the mistakes that people frequently make that you wish, all this kind of stuff. There were some scenarios that came out of that, and I took those scenarios and I wrote the scripts for these videos, but I played with them a bit. I enhanced them to make a point. So I took them out of reality and I made them a little trite. I made them convenient. I made them easy, simple, silly. They're not goofy funny, but there are some things that happen that's like, really? It doesn't happen that way. Oh, come on. It'd be great if the students watching this are like, oh, well, yeah, it'd be great if my workers reacted that way. So not all of it is realistic, but that's not the point. We're not trying to depict realism. We're trying to make a point. We're trying to get the learners to watch this and go, oh. Because what I do is I take a scenario and we show the leader on the job site responding to a situation horribly badly and just screwing everything up, making everybody upset. All people get injured, all kinds of problems because it wasn't handled correctly. Then we have a discussion. We show them the video and we say, what did you see? And then, sometimes they're chuckling, like, what did you see that he did wrong? And they're like, everything. Yeah, that's kind of the point. But we have them delineate because we want them to see the simple, basic thing. It's easy to look at the scenario, the whole thing, and go, man, that was all messed up. But what about it was messed up? What specifically did you see? Because we're trying to get the learners to identify that these are the things they could see. Little things. It's not always the big thing that you need to change. Sometimes it's a whole bunch of little things that you need to address so that the big things don't happen. And so we show them this video, and on a flip chart, we write out everything they say. And so then we act like, okay, we're going to take that stuff, we're going to send it all to the lead guy, we call him Manuel, because they're all also done in Spanish language, because most of our workers speak Spanish. And so we send your notes off to Manuel, the lead guy, and we're going to see if he takes them to heart. So then show him another video that's the exact same situation, only this time the leader handles things better. I never say perfectly, because there's always room to improve. But that the leader does them better, And in doing so, the problems that we saw as outcomes in the first video don't happen. And the crew responds better, the situation is better, people don't get hurt, blah, blah, blah. Now, the better video especially, but sometimes even the bad one, but the better video, it is easy to dismiss it, just like these episodes of Lone Ranger, Andy Griffith, Star Trek, whatever, because the point that we make can seem trite. It can seem easy. It can seem, well, scripted. I mean, obviously it is. But that's because we're trying to depict that the only difference between these two scenarios is how the leader responds, what the leader does. That's the emphasis. And so I strip out a whole bunch of the reality in order for us to be able to make the point that we're trying to make. And I think the same thing was happening in the Lone Ranger and Andy Griffith and Star Trek, in all these other shows of that era, where Leave It to Beaver, all these other shows where you had these points being made. Now, why am I going off about this? Well, because maybe it's just me as I'm getting older and gray, but it seems like as a society we've lost track of some of the points that were made back in these old vintage shows. See, we don't do shows about that now because we don't want to be accused of being preachy. And if we do something that is preachy, then we do something that is so in your face that, you know, the analogy is hitting somebody over the head with a sledgehammer. You know, there's no subtlety to it whatsoever, and it is just boom, and it's usually one specific issue. And I think of shows like Law and Order or SVU, which I love. I like those shows, but some of the episodes feel more like we're trying to just drill you on this topic than an actual procedural crime show. You know, and when it is that abrasive, it's hard to absorb that. But for something like these old vintage shows, oh, it's so easy to just be watching, just enjoying, and all of a sudden they just slip under the wire. This point, the speech is made about how we need to be accepting of everybody, how we need to be keeping in mind that the laws, the rules apply to everyone equally, or they don't apply to anyone. That's something Captain Kirk would say all the time. Those concepts are very relevant to us today. But I feel like because we have dismissed the silliness of how they were presented on these vintage shows, we threw the baby out with the bathwater, to cite another cliche analogy, and we've lost our footing in these things that really mattered. And so, it's an observation. I don't have an immediate solution except to encourage you to watch more of these vintage shows again and encourage others around you to watch them. They're entertaining, they're a lot of fun, and along the way, they make some pretty good impact here and here if you're paying attention. And in fact, the really great thing is you don't always have to even be paying attention. Sometimes you're just watching it and boop, there it is, and you didn't even realize you were being coached. I think there's a lot to be said about the silly, trite, cliche type of morality that these older shows present. Say, well, yeah, but they also had some things that are, a little problematic by today's standards. Get over it. I don't know of any scenario in which you actually improve without just causing a little disturbance in the forefront. I could go off on what's going on at my company right now. We are in a massive health mode, company-wise, of trying to grow and improve our company, but recognizing that doesn't just come from bringing in more money, from adding more business, but that there's a lot of internal stuff that has not really gotten the attention that it needs, and we need to be doing that now and to really go there, first you have to admit that you haven't been doing something, and you have to stir everything up. You have to disturb what is sedentary, and that requires a lot of turmoil, a lot of friction, a lot of some bruised egos. But out of it can come this magnificent going forth. And I feel like that's where we can be too. So go back and watch some of these old shows. So if you see some stuff that makes you cringe, just suck it up and move on, because the other stuff makes me cringe all the time in the world around us. But pay attention to the very simple, basic, foundational, fundamental values that can be taught, because those are the things that I feel like we as a culture have kind of started to slip on. It would do us some good to revisit them. All right. The old man is going to stop talking about the good old days of television and actually get back to doing his laundry and probably watch some more of the good old days of television. All right, with that, I will let you all go, and I'll see you next time from my front porch.